I've got Jesse Trujillo here with me today. Jesse, thanks for being here, man. How you doing today?
Hey, doing great, Michael. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I got to tell you, I for the listeners out there, I saw Jesse speak at a live event that he and I were both at. Jesse was one of the guest speakers, and sat there in the crowd, and I was just floored. I was just so taken back by Jesse's story. With you talk about a story of perseverance and battling through adversity, and we all go through our stuff. And I think when I heard Jesse's story, my heart just like went out to him and his just everything he went through. And then it seems like once he was battling back, something else happened. I was like, gosh, how can one man go through so much and have the courage and strength to just keep fighting, keep battling? So knew right away I wanted to get Jesse on here. It's been that was several months ago. I heard his story, and so happy we were able to make this happen, Jesse. So it's funny is I have guests on here, and everyone listens to podcasts, in general, and everyone has these stories they tell, and I like to think that there's probably no better story than the comeback story. And that's most definitely your story, Jesse, is the comeback story. So I'm excited to dig into this today. Jesse, thanks again for being here. And I guess let's just start from a career standpoint, right? Because this is kind of where your story weaves in and out of career and family and everything kind of mixed in with the highs and the lows. But you're obviously, we can get into a very dedicated family guy as well. But it all kind of started with you kind of taking a leap of faith and your career. How did you get into real estate? Was it always what you wanted to do? Was it something you always had this dream and vision of, or was there something else in mind?
Yeah, completely different than where I thought my life was going to go. I went straight from high school to UCSD. I had always wanted to be a doctor. It was something actually, you know, in when I was 16, a doctor saved my life. I got into a motorcycle accident, and it just kind of what they did and how they helped me, it made me go, man, I want to do that. I want to do the same. I want to like that's something I've always wanted to do. So I went to UCSD, became an undergraduate studying pre med, and thought that was going to be my life. Thought that's, I saw myself as a doctor and studying there. And then my sister had, older sister graduated from San Diego State, and she became a teacher. She was going to move out of the house from our parents' house, and she's like, I'm about to graduate. And I said, oh, you should, you know, she's like, I'm going to go rent an apartment. And I said, no, you know what? You should buy, don't rent. And I just said it without really knowing anything why I said it. It was just things I've always heard, right? And then she's like, oh, I've racked up the credit cards at San Diego State to give to students. I don't even know where my credit's at. I said, well, let me take a look. So I studied how to fixed her credit, got into, got her approved for a loan, kind of learned how that went, with the loan officer, found an agent, work with me with her approval. And we bought her a 3-bedroom condo down the street from my parents' house. I figured out how to rent it to 2 college students, and she was going to pay like 100 or 200 bucks a month after that.
Wow.
And so when we closed, even though everything was in her name and everything, I think I was more excited than her, right? It was like a rush. I mean, I was still going to college. I was a starving student, and I remember telling her, man, hey, if I could figure out how to buy another one, would you be willing to? And she's like, well, if you could figure it out. So we ended up buying a little rental for her, a little studio. Back in the day, it was like last foreclosures back in the late 90s. And I got it, we rented it, and then by the time we knew, we were buying a rental for her every couple months. She got to the point where she had a several good amount of rentals, but me as the brother, I became the property manager, not by choice. It just kind of happened that way because she was busy, right? She was a teacher, and I was over there at college. So it got to the point where it was too much for me, and I told her, hey, I think it's time to sell. I'm or give it to another property manager. I'm going to school. And she's like, you know what? Let's just sell it, Jesse. So I went ahead and found an agent that helped us start selling them. And as she was selling them, right, these are all in her name. The market had gone up. And I just started seeing the amount of money she was making on each one of those. And I was like, oh man, that's a business right there. Little did I know that was kind of like flipping houses to a certain degree. And so it just, not only was I excited about it, now it just like, oh man, now there's a profit margin in here. Like, so it really opened my eyes to what we can do on that side. So I decided to take the leap. I did my first flip by myself. I remember being inside, painting at night with the light on, reading my chemistry book in one hand and painting in the other, shocking myself, changing the plugs, learning. I remember I made $5,000 on that first flip, and it was like the best thing ever for a starving student. And that's all it took. After that, I had been worked my way up. I was working at UCSD Medical Center, became actually a head surgeon for perinatal research laboratory, and I made a decision, and I was telling the doctors, they knew I was doing that on the side. And a couple of those doctors told me in different ways, hey, Jesse, I'd rather do what you're doing. And I'm like, these are guys I look up to. These are guys I want to be like. These are guys that I'm striving to be. And they're telling me I shouldn't. They'd rather be doing real estate. And I asked them, why would you say that? And they're like, the bureaucracies we have to deal with, the insurance thing, it's not the same. Yes, it is about helping people, but when you can't help someone, you don't even know how that feels because the insurance tells you no, or things happen. And it really stuck with me because a couple of doctors told me in different ways, and I made a decision. I decided to leave UCSD completely, my job and everything. In 2006, I jumped into it and I went full time. What happened? The market crashed in 2008 and 9. So literally I lost. So one, I wasn't working anymore. I lost everything. And with the market crash, and then I had to make a decision. And to go back to school, finish being a doctor, or do I go back in real estate? I remember asking my wife, and I said, honey, what do you want me to do? What would you want? She says, do whatever you love. And I was like, man, I still loved real estate. I mean, I had a bad taste in my mouth from what happened, but can you learn from that, right? And I think that's a lot of people, something goes bad and you just stop. And for me, it was like, no, I feel I can make it better. I think even though I went through some hardship, I know what I can do to make sure. I'm not gonna say it can never happen again, but it's just that I can avoid it. I know what to know when the market crashes or comes down or changes. How do you avoid that? And so I did. I went back into real estate, and I remember it was 2009. I found my one flip. Finally, after going through it, looking for investors and everything, we made $60,000 on that one flip, and I used that money to do 20 flips in 2010. And that's all she wrote. After that, it just kept growing and growing and growing, and haven't turned back since.
Wow. So Jesse, when you say, the market crashed and you lost it all, was that a bankruptcy then? Or like what exactly, like
100%.
wow. So
Yeah. So we
it,
went through bankruptcy. We lost everything. I mean, at that point when that happened, we had just had our newborn daughter, and we went to go live in my father-in-law's garage. So with my newborn daughter. So like literally, there was no way up. There was nowhere else to go but up, right? So again, really, it was a pivotal moment of, do you go back to a safe, secure W-2 job as a doctor, or do you go do something that is kind of volatile, but it's what you love, right? You enjoy it. You like waking up to it. And I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it as much as being a doctor, but it was different. It was just completely different mind frame. And I'm glad what I chose. I still love what I do. I still, I'm been in it for over 20 years now, and I love going to see these properties. I love seeing what we can do, what we can turn in, and a new family walking into this remodeled home in this. So yeah, from bankrupt completely to just kind of really working hard and finding solutions with that. It's definitely something that I love sharing, because I think there's so many people, especially during that time, so many people had to do bankruptcy. I mean, there were so many people lost their homes and everything. And I think it was a feeling of kind of like almost failure. It was a feeling of, what did I do wrong? And a lot of it, not saying a lot of it was the market that changed and it caused so many people to go through that. But a bankruptcy doesn't define you, right? I mean, it's something that happened in life, and if you understand it and then what to do to avoid it going forward, I think that's the biggest win from it that I took from there. I
mhm.
I pushed and I pushed, and trust me, when you have bankruptcy, your credit's ruined. So I had to work with bad credit even to get where I was at. So getting it, knowing how important credit is. I mean, I have a 16 to 17-year-old now, and I can tell you that I'm talking to them about credit score, how important it is in the world we live in, how important it is to keep on top of your payments, and how that can really make your life easier. it can help you, but it's very dangerous as well, right? I mean, it's easy to rack up credit cards. It's easy to put things on there and that you don't see it, right? Because you're just swiping a card. But if you use it correctly to help your credit, doors open for you and your life is much easier.
Hmm. Yeah, Jesse, I remember. I mean, I was just starting my first company around that same time. Those were some scary days. The 2008, 2009 crash of everything. And uh, take me through. Was there a little bit like intuition, just like maybe a spiritual know that this is the path? I mean, here you are, I'm sure, catching side eye glances from in laws, and yeah, you had the support of your wife, but like friends saying, "Here's this, supposedly doctor who." Essentially failed at this try, and he's going to just keep trying to get, like, now looking at you, it's like, of course this was the path, but I mean, what a lonely place that must have been. Like, did you ever feel like you were the only one that saw this vision?
I was on an island for
Yeah,
sure. I was
yeah.
on an island by myself. No, not not negatively, but a lot of times, a lot of people don't understand, right? A lot of people don't see the way you see things, and don't get me wrong, I'm the guy that I like hearing people's feedback, but there's a difference of hearing feedback and then just doing what someone else tells you, right? So I would get feedback, hearing them, and it would help me to either kind of reassure my own decision, and that's what I did. There was a lot of people that thought I was making. I mean, you hear, hey, you just went broke in real estate, or would you like to be a doctor that we know they make good money? And I decided to keep going in real estate. So it sounded like I went against anything and what everyone would think would be normal to do, but I believed in it so much, and I think that's the difference. When you believe in something, there's a mind shift change that pushes you to do something that most people wouldn't. And I can tell you, I mean, if everybody thought real estate was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? And I think it's how bad do you want it, right? How bad do you want to push yourself? I know there was a commitment. I know I put a lot of hours into it, and I know what it would take. Not that even being a doctor, there's a lot of time and effort, and it's ongoing. That education never stops. But for me, the real estate was something that I was willing to put the time and effort to make sure I did it right. And I think that's where a lot of people, they don't see things like that. I'm not gonna say they choose the easy route, but it's a scary route, right? And I think that's the difference. I am a risk taker to a certain degree, and I take risk, and sometimes there's a lot of reward, and sometimes you do feel it. So
Hmm.
um, it's kind of one of those things where I tell people I love taking the risk, but take an educated decision on it, right? Be smart. Don't just go for it. Like, really sit down and think, what are the negatives? What are you going to come up against? And prepare, right? When you prepare for things, it's a lot different than just jumping in the, like, it's like jumping in the jumping into the deep end, right? Is the water freezing? Is the water not? Have you checked it? Double check, right? So I think that was my mentality. Is it doesn't matter. Like, I'll listen to everyone, but you got to make that final decision. Whatever makes you happy at the end of the day. Whatever, it's your life, and yes, you think of others, because I had obviously a newborn baby. I had my wife, and I had to think of them, and I still felt one, that was the right decision because I knew I could make money in it. I just had to work hard to make sure I got there safely.
Hmm. No, that's so true. I've read this recently, and I think it's such a powerful statement, and something to live by. And you know, personally, I always try to think positive, and today's going to be a good day, and we have these mantras we live by. But it also, there's a piece in there that says when something does go awry, right? Today, this week, what tools am I going to use to dig in to get back to center? And I think that's so powerful to have that ahead of time. Again, it's not necessarily wanting or hoping or expecting something negative to happen. It's just being real with life, and allowing ourselves to feel it, and whatever that tool is in the toolbox. Some people might, lean towards prayer. Some people might lean towards meditation. Some people might just say, I need to go on a walk, go exercise, whatever. But I think, knowing ahead of time, this is the reaction I'm gonna give. And I'm not going to let it take over. I'm going to almost turn around to be on offense again instead of defense, to get past it. So I think that was beautiful. It kind of runs parallel with what you said earlier, talking about bankruptcy. You're like, what doesn't define me? It's something that happened. And so I guess moving forward out of that part, it sounds like it didn't take you long at all. So you flipped when you said you made 60,000 and you just turned that right into, what was it? You said another dozen properties?
20 flips the next year.
20.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. So you said, I don't care what this looks like on my credit score. That'll heal itself. I'm going to keep moving and get creative.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of that. And yes, it's me working hard, but it's having people believe in you. Trust me, getting people to say yes to invest with me or things like that wasn't easy back then, right? So, especially with everything had just gone on in the real estate world. But I think I was able to do 20 that year because you do one flip and you prove to people, one, that you pay them back, your
Mm-hmm.
investors, that you know what you're doing, you bought the right property, and if you do it again and then you got 10, well, shoot, now they want to see even more. So you have to start somewhere, and you have to, I don't want to call it prove yourself, but I think it's almost show people that you care, that you know, and you respect, especially when you have investors behind you,
Mm-hmm.
that you care about their money as well, right? You're buying smart. They get paid first before you make a dime, And I think doing that kept opening doors for me, kept opening doors because it's it's in anything you do, like whoever's helping you, like just remember that, like don't forget who's helped you, who's helped you get to where you're at, and making sure that they're taken care of and you're keeping all your promises to them, because the moment you don't, like I said, if I wouldn't have paid one investor back then, they would never they'd lent me again on another property. So it's
Sure.
knowing how important it is to keep your word on what you're doing. I think that's what helped us grow in my company, is just keeping our word with everything we do. If we say we're going to close it, let's close it. If we're going to say we're closed by this day, I mean, things happen, but I mean, I'm just saying, if 99% of the times you're doing everything you can to keep your word and make things happen, that just keeps opening the door every single day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so Ajax Capital is on its feet again. The comeback story number one. And take me through what's next. Then you just start to grow and build your empire. And uh, can you do flips? Are you doing buy and hold? Like, how are you starting to build and grow your portfolio?
Yeah, so I mean, we came back. It was just, again, and Ajax Capital is kind of a newer company where we raise money, but Ajax Homes was
Homes. Okay. Yeah.
really the main focus of just the flips, right? We're just doing all flips, and then things happen. Of course, you think everything's going good, and life throws you a curveball. In 2012, got a knock on my door, and this is right here now. By then, we're already doing 30 to 40 flips a year, and I get a knock on my door, and I see a man with a badge. I'm opening the door, and he's telling me Jesse Trujillo, and I was like, oh, he just said my name, and I thought something had happened across the street at a park that was in front of our house, and I said, what's going on? He says, you have to come with us, and I'm like, oh, what's going on here? And I had no clue. He actually took me in, and then I ended up finding out that it was a sealed indictment, and it was from properties that we had sold back in 2008, 2009, two properties, and ended up finding out through, I went to an attorney friend of mine, see if he could help me out because I'd never been involved in anything like this, and he finally found out. He says, all right, Jesse, I found out it's these two properties that you sold back in 2008, 2009, and I ended up finding out that those two properties I had sold to a lender that had clients for quote unquote these two properties. Well, I ended up finding out that he had a scam in several counties around here in California, where they were buying houses with stolen identities and renting them out and keeping the rents and letting them foreclose. Well, the reason I got involved was because when he had came to me, he says, "Hey Jesse, I have a buyer for these two properties, but I'm going to be their property manager. We're going to rent them out, and I'm going to help them out." He says, "Would you help us rent them? So that by the time we buy these properties, I'll already have a tenant." I said, "Sure, I'm a go-getter. Yeah, no problem." Well, again, what happened is they foreclosed after we sold these properties, and me not knowing, when they went to the door and asked these tenants, "Well, who rented these to you?" They said, "Jesse Trujillo." And that's where, like, oh, so Jesse must have been involved in this whole idea of thing. And so that's how I got involved. I my attorney told me, Jesse, don't worry about it. I'm going to prove your innocence. You just keep working, keep doing what you got to do. And so yeah, I mean, it was kept going, right. it doesn't feel comfortable when you know this is behind you, like over your head, right, and just kind of holding you back, even though you know you're innocent. At the same time, it just going through that, it just wasn't a fun experience at all, like not one bit. And then we ended up finding out the attorney I hired was a friend of mine, and done very well here in law school. A year later on Thanksgiving Day, he calls me to his office, and I go in there, big bright office, a leather chair. I'm sitting there, and he goes, "We have a problem." And I said, "What's going on?" It's Thanksgiving morning, and he's like, "Hey, they want to bring in your cousins, which is my family, like my brothers, and because they were on title with me on the properties that those two properties that we sold." And I said, "Why? Why is that?" "Well, just because they were on there, they want to bring them in." And I had just gone through a year of just dealing with this mentally and everything. I said, "No, that's not an option here." And he goes, "Well, don't worry. If you sign here, sign this plea, I'll still prove your innocence, and you won't have to worry about it." Well, me trusting an attorney, right? He's the guy that's supposed to be here to protect me. I went ahead and signed. Here I am thinking, a couple months later, quote unquote, there's an arraignment there, and we're there, and I'm inviting my family and everything. We're just so happy to get this behind us, get this completely done. Well, we're inside there in the court, and the judge is looking at the paperwork, looking at me, looking at the paperwork, and he said, "Mr. Trujillo, are you sure you want to do this?" And I looked at my attorney, and my attorney nodded his head, and I said, "Yes, Your Honor, I do." And he says, "Okay, well, bailiff, take him away for 5 years." And at that moment, we were like, "What just happened?" The whole courtroom got quiet. I was in shock. I hadn't said goodbye to my wife. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to my kids. I didn't get a chance to get my business in order. We were talking about where we were going to go to dinner that night after that. Like that was our plans. And all of a sudden, my life got changed completely around at that moment. My attorney started crying, kind of making a show, seeing what just happened. And here I am. I ended up finding out is that my attorney had never turned in any evidence to show my innocence. He was actually never working on my case. He was money laundering for some very bad people in the background. He ended up on the news a couple months later, and ended up finding out that he was money laundering lots of money, and he got arrested, and he had a federal case and went to federal prison himself. My problem is by now, well, that's what happened. He never proved anything. He was just trying to get me to sign a plea and was giving us a story. So now here I am in prison working on this, trying to prove my innocence. But by the time we were, working on this with attorneys, nobody would work on my case. It was just going to take too long. And by the time that I would be out. Well, sadly, as I'm in there, I get my first visitor, and it's my sister coming, driving up 10 hours up to go see me. And she's there, and she comes in crying, and I tell her what's going on. She says, "Hey, I know we never told my mom about your situation because we didn't want to worry her, but we just found out she has ALS.
Mm,
That's Lou Gehrig's disease,
mm.
and it's taking her fast, and she's probably not going to make it, before you come out." So it changed my mind frame while I was in there, and I said, I have to go see my mom. I have to, like, there's nothing else that mattered. I have to go to a place. And I knew that they had a program called Fire Camp where you can go and become a firefighter in these camps around California. And there was a couple close to San Diego, and I said she'd be able to go see me there if I got there. So, as much as I look like an athlete and a bodybuilder over here, I ran every day. I was running 5 miles. I made sure. I just said I got to get there. I got to get there. And at the end, I worked hard, and they accepted me, right? And the funny thing is, they didn't end up taking me as a firefighter. They took me as a cook. But hey, I got there,
You
right?
got
And
in.
that's all that mattered. I did finally get to go there, and I did get to see my mom a couple times. By the time I saw her, she couldn't talk anymore. She was in a feeding tube. And I saw her a couple more times, and she passed away. So by then, I could tell you I was in a very dark place of, number one, I was in prison for someone that I trusted, these lenders, right? They took advantage of me. My attorney never went even tried to prove my innocence. I just lost my mother, that was my cheerleader in life, that was always there for me. And so I really had to focus, and I told him, send me all the information from this court case. Let me just put my mind in something meanwhile. Well, while I'm in there, I find a document that shows that It was a clerical error that they had done, that the amount of money that the banks had supposedly lost was never corrected because no one ever took into consideration that they resold these properties after they foreclosed. So even though I had a smoking gun of showing them that I should have never even gone to prison at all, well, it didn't matter because I was so close to coming out that no attorney would even wanted to touch it at that point. It's hard to overturn something in California, and knowing that, it's I had to almost just sit there and just wait, and knowing that I was in there not only for the wrong reason, now even another clerical error was another reason why I shouldn't have been in there. Well, I could tell you, Michael, that I came out of there, right? I mean, it's finally 2 years later. They ended up letting me go after 2 years, and I was angry at the world, right? I was angry at everything that I went through, losing my mother, but I knew that like revenge isn't good for the heart and the soul. And it was I shared a quote from Frank Sinatra. It says, "The greatest revenge is massive success." I remember hearing that, and I said, "Oh man, I love that. That's something I can run with, and that's the type of revenge I can live with." Right. So I focused. Right. I mean, I came out. I came out of there like of prison, and I joked that I came out like with like a hunger, right? Just a hunger and so mad, and a hunger for that carne asada burrito that I've been missing for a couple years. I went to go had a couple of those, and then straight to work. I kissed my wife, I hugged my kids, and I went all in. And I worked and I worked, and I got the company back on top. And for 5 years, it went so fast, and I kind of like when I saw the dust settle, I kind of looked back, and I'd worked our way up to getting about a $15 million net worth for our family after that. And it was one of those things that it was because I pushed. It was because I didn't let anyone stop me and or my family to get to where we want to be. And it's been so humbling to know that what I did, it's people are going through things in life every day. Some small adversities, some big adversities. And I'm not saying everything is as easy because it was hard. It was a hard time all those years. But I pushed and I pushed and I got there. And I can tell you that even after that, 2 years ago, I remember that document that I found. That honestly, I even put that behind me because like it doesn't. I just need to keep focusing on life. I'm not gonna just keep dwelling in the past. But I couldn't get it behind me, and I said, I got to fight it one more time. And I went ahead and I went to court, and I can tell you, 11 years later, we won in court, and we found that document again, and a judge said, how dare you to the DA, and pretty much there just kind of cleaned it up, got rid of all the restitution. And right now we're still fighting some things that kind of get me completely exonerated. Hopefully it goes through, but if not, I'm still living life and I'm enjoying it. And it's something about showing people and showing my kids. You just don't stop, you got to keep going until you get that final no. That's when you stop, right? And even then some, right? But you just, if you believe in something, you keep going, and if you and it's a learning lesson. I believe the worst thing someone could say to you is no. You won't know that until you ask. So I just share that story because I just feel it's something that people know that I pushed through. It wasn't easy. It's about persevering, right? And it's not giving up all this time. And it's just something I hope that I can pass on to the world as whoever hears the story.
Wow. um, so much going through my brain right now. Jesse, thank you for sharing. I guess one thing I can't help but think of, we've all felt, we're going through a period of a season of loneliness, but we're at the comfort of our living room couch, right? We're laying in bed, right? When we're at our rock bottom, or at least it seems like it for that season of life. You're in prison. And I can't even imagine, like, what did you, like, that story you just told was beyond inspirational. When you were sitting in your cell and you didn't know about the document, you didn't know, even at the time, let's just say you were getting out in 2 years, what did you use to keep your spirit high, to, at the same time, let's always still throw in there, obviously you find out your mother's sick, like all these things are stacked up against you. Like, how did you drop into a mindset that said, no, I'm not going to quit. I'm going to choose to be positive. I'm going to get out of this somehow. I can't imagine, because you had nothing around you. There was no family around you. There was no loved ones. There was no support. Was there a couple things that you can look back and remember that you used to just to try uplift your spirit to keep going?
I tell people that money comes and goes. You know, it's anything like, gosh, any material things can come and go, but what people can't take away are memories, right? And for me, being in there, knowing, and I'm saying memories, right? It could be memories of my mom, it could be memories of my kids, of things, looking forward to the future, having dreams, having goals. I think that's what kept me going. Because trust me, there were some hard times. There were times I just wanted to give up. There were times I didn't want to think about anything else, and I would have to. There's no one else that could snap me out of it except for myself. And the only way I would do that is through my memories. That's all I had in there, memories and future goals and future things that I saw myself doing when I would come out. It was a hard spot, and I said, you just got to keep going. Another day, Jesse, another day. And just got to the point where that another day was the day I got out, right? And then after that, hey, guess what? Now it's time to hit those. What are you going to do to get to those goals that you told yourself you were going to do? And it's doing that. I always joke. People tell me like I'm a pretty frugal guy, I think, overall, and I'm the guy that maybe won't spend money on new shoes until my wife yells at me that I got to get some new shoes. I'd rather spend money on memories.
Mm.
Like we're taking a trip, right? We're going to have a dinner, or just different things that they're memories that people can't take away from you. Something that I love, laughing, right? I always tell people, if you're not laughing, you're not living. And for me, even in the worst situations, I probably laugh too much, right? But that's what keeps me going. I love to see people laugh. I love to laugh myself. It's just it's doesn't matter what's happening in life. I've been sharing my story on stage lately, and it's kind of crazy to know when I speak on stage, I look at all that crowd, and I don't. There's so many people in that crowd that end up coming to me after, and they start sharing stories with me of things things that maybe a family was in prison, maybe they just lost their mom, their dad. It's just there's so many things that I realize that you don't know the person sitting next to you what they're going through. You have no clue. And how awesome is it if you just shake their hand, say hello, smile at them, make them laugh. Like those little things in life, you have no clue who you're helping, and you might not even know. Even if you do say something, they might not even laugh until after they walk away from you. But people need laughter in their life, and I feel like even me, when I was in prison, I remember making myself laugh, and I probably looked crazy sometimes, but I had to, right? Because I remembered that there's still good in the world, right? There's still good in life. This is again, and we talk about me being in prison. Trust me, don't think I didn't think, man, anyone hears my story, they say, well, they put you in prison, you must be guilty, right? So it's having that mentality even behind you. It's like it doesn't define me, and if people don't, even you get to know me, if you still believe that, well, then you're probably not the person I want to be around, right? It's who you surround yourself with. It's really changed my mind frame a lot in life because of that. Because you can't just be you gotta live your life. Don't worry, you gotta be a good person too. You gotta. I mean, for us, it's been giving back, and I'm not. Trust me, I don't consider myself rich. We've had our ups and downs even since then, right, in the business. But I can tell you that, like, we've changed, right? We live a good life. We live with what we need, and then we've been doing mission trips, right? We've been going to build houses in different places around the world for people that need it. I mean, I think it's so important. Not only for it reminds me, it's almost like a reset in my life to remind me how lucky we are and blessed, and then for my kids to see it too. Like, hey, this hard work, and we're very very lucky, and it's about giving back. I share the story about, and it's not for anything to get in any type of notice, but like we've donated our office to it's called the Innocent Center here in San Diego, and it's a project that helps people get freed from prison that are innocent, and that's something dear to my heart because obviously I went through it, and it's I can give back a little bit on that side for that someone that I might not ever meet, but I'm helping those attorneys to get that someone out. Just the thought of it brings a smile to my face to
Hmm.
know that that's going to happen there. So I think it's very important for people to laugh, to give back, and obviously help someone else laugh. When was the last time you made someone laugh, made someone smile? You have no clue what's going on in their background. Make them smile. If you make that a goal from this today, I think that's the biggest win.
It's beautiful. Thank you, Jesse. One of the many parts of your story that inspired me was, when you got out, it wasn't, well, I'm not going to do this anymore, or I'm going to take a couple of years, or I'm going to go try to figure things out. I mean, you hit the ground running, and all those future memories that you talked about, where you could tell were lighting you up inside, and of course you were angry when you got out, and all the feelings of losing a couple of years of your life, and all the financial hardships and legal bills and everything else that went along with it for something that you didn't even do. But the part that I just really admire was, you mentioned within 5 years building your net worth back up to 15 million, and I think for me the 15 million is just a byproduct, right, of your belief and your mindset. What were like maybe just a couple of things that you did in the beginning, and it could have just been, was it just a couple of mind shifts, or what were maybe not necessarily real estate wise, like, but just maybe your outlook? What were a couple things that allowed you to get in that mindset where you're just like heads down for 5 years?
I can tell you, Michael, it takes sacrifice. And because at that moment, I don't think I saw it. It wasn't until later that I realized, I was like, oh, wow, there's, you sacrifice a lot. When I came out, I think I was somewhat pretty good balance, like being around with my kids and stuff, right? Because I had not been with them and my wife and everything. Like, so we would still do things, but I would work a lot of hours. I would work really hard. I told myself I don't want my family to ever go through this again or be in that situation. And if knowing that was my goal, I had to sacrifice hanging around with friends. I had to sacrifice maybe late nights, weekends and stuff. Like there was a lot. I mean, I look back now and it does take a toll. I'm not going to say it was just like, oh, I did it like nothing. To where I needed to go, I needed to go all in. And I say this, I have family that helped me. I have family that was behind me, but you're alone. I say that carefully, right? Because my wife was there and my sisters were there, but you're alone when it comes to, everyone has their own life and their own problems they need to deal with. Like no one's just gonna be like, hey Jesse, I'll support you and your family and I'm gonna pay your mortgage and I'm gonna pay your rent or this and that. No, like you have to understand that you have to do this yourself. And I think that was for me to know. I guess I told myself, people help me, but I had to do this by myself. And if I had to find the people that would be willing to join me and help me in what my goal was, right? But also make it a win-win. Like when I say that, like investors, it's a win-win. I was working super hard. I was finding the properties. They were lending money. We both make money, right? Same thing with just anybody you work with on that. So it's creating something that you can't let anyone's no stop you. I got so many no's in that beginning. I can tell you that it was hard, right? Even hearing, and trust me, don't think I thought, oh Jesse, you just came from prison. Like it was, not everyone believes you, right? I could tell my story all day long and like, oh, yes, I wasn't guilty. They're like, well, psychologically, you went to jail, so you must have been guilty. So I understood it, right? I didn't necessarily get mad at that. It just, I understood it. It was just 10 times harder to get things done for me because of that. But I look back now, how awesome is that? That was 10 times harder and I got it done.
Mm-hmm.
I, you know, I hope my kids watch this one day and hear me talk about it, and they look back and like, wow, that's right. Dad, it wasn't easy for dad, and it's not easy for anyone. But not only was it not easy for him, he still didn't let that stop him. I joke with my kids all the time. I make them go, and I said, have you asked them? Did you get a no? And they laugh, right? Because they know what I'm talking about. Like you don't stop until you get a yes. Or if they say no, well then you got to accept it. But you will never know, and that's, I think, um, the biggest thing when you're in those moments of sacrifice, to know that there is a payoff from it. And as long as you're going in that direction, you do have to balance yourself to a certain degree. Because I can share, when I got to that 15 million, I kind of was like almost surprised myself, because I think I was moving so fast that I don't even know what just happened. And then what happened? Emotions started coming up. Like I think emotions I had pushed away, missing my mom and things like that. So you have to be very careful. And I talk about mental health and stuff to people because I think it's so important that you got to get in a mind frame, but you need it. Like I was working a lot for my family, and I'm okay with that. It was for myself, but my family. But you gotta, people talk about who's your who, right? Who, like, why? Why do you do things? And the first thing people say is my family, my kids, my parents, whoever. I believe in that, and my kids and my wife are my who and my why. But I had a mind shift when I hit that mark to teach myself, hey Jesse, what about you?
Mm,
Have you thought about you? Like, are you happy? Are you doing things for yourself? And I almost had a realization that I put myself a little bit on the back burner. And I think that's important for so many people. Like, there's nothing wrong. It almost sounds selfish. Your who should be you, right? Like, that's your first one. After that could be your kids, your wife, your family, your parents. But your first who is you. If you're not happy, it resonates to everyone around you,
hmm
including your kids, including your wife, including your people you work with. So making yourself happy is very, very important. I think that's, you know, I joke around that I make myself laugh all the time. I mean, I really do. Like I'm a jokester and I like to laugh and I do it purposely. I enjoy joke around. I enjoy myself. Like I just have a good time, and in the byproduct of that, I see my kids smile. I see my wife smile. Like I see people laughing. Like, but I'm not doing it just for them. I'm doing it for myself, and it just resonates. And I could tell you, there's a difference when you see people and you're around someone and you see they're not happy. You know that they're not happy. You could feel it, right?
hmm
You could see it. And I'm not saying I'm perfect and I'm always happy. No, I have my ups and downs, but I could tell you that because I know to watch myself first and taking, hey, are you good, Jesse? Are you happy right now? Are you excited about what you're doing? And when I know I am, I know it resonates to everyone around me. So I share that because I think it's so important. If yes, I hit a milestone, and you're right, the 15 million was amazing. Money comes and goes, but happiness is way more important than money.
hmm Yeah, that's what I saw, and the way you described it, was the 15 million was, and you described it, and you kind of left that last. It was like kind of the byproduct, like I said, of you putting yourself first, and of course your who and your why with your family. But yeah, I tell you, I recently just kind of put a spotlight on my own life. I think a lot of entrepreneurs and people who are seeking how to be better and self-improvement, it's like we do it for others or for purposes, or we can get lost and do it for things. But I had to really look in the mirror, so to speak. I had a buddy a couple years ago that told me, he's kind of the plane analogy. He said, remember, you got to put your own mask on before you put anybody else's on. I was like, that's so true. We
Love it.
forget, right? We forget all the time. So thank you for talking about that, because I don't think it's brought up enough. And like you said, you feel selfish, and especially as a caretaker and a provider for your family, like,
Right.
yeah, but if you don't take, even it's just a few minutes every day to check in, how am I doing? Or a bigger picture of, on a weekend, going and doing something just for yourself to really just, get in tune and get recentered with, why am I doing these things? And am I still in check with what I want to do? And is this who I am? Am I getting lost in the shuffle of, it's so easy, there's so many distractions in the world today. So thanks for talking about that. Jesse, this has been amazing. And I feel like I could ask about 10 more questions on about 5 different topics with you. So maybe we'll have to schedule a future comeback. Well, not, so to speak, comeback for have you to come back on the podcast. But I do have 2 final questions for you today. Um, First one, Jesse, is what have you learned about yourself as you've gone through this experience?
You know, there's there's something about knowing what you're good at, what you're not, what your strong points are. And I'm really good at perseverance. I'm persistent. My persistence is, my wife might not think it's a gift, but it's a gift, right? I mean, I'm persistent on getting things done. I don't give up. And I think I got to know that about myself, that wow, you are very persistent, and you don't like to stop, and you don't like to let negative things stop you either. And I think that's something I can show that and know that that's important for people to be persistent, when, especially if it's for something good. I want especially my kids to do that, right? I think I've shown that to them, and I'm excited. They're following my lead right now, and it's a kind of a very cool thing that they're in the business with me now to a certain degree, even though while they're in high school. And I think I shared with you that they're flipping themselves, and they're on they just on TV show that's coming out this October called Kids Who Flip, and it's because of their persistence. Because trust me, they didn't want to do it. I pushed them. They pushed themselves, and they got it done. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned about myself. That my persistence, hopefully, I pass that on to more people.
Oh, that's beautiful. So let's highlight that real quick. Kids Who Flip. That's coming out this fall. You said.
Yeah, so Discovery Channel.
Okay.
And we filmed it last year, and it's coming up this fall. And my kids are on there, and I'm on there too. I can tell you that the camera adds way too many pounds because I saw that my shirt was a little tight on there, but it's a great experience, and it also shows as we grow into this, right? I mean, all my everything I've went through and everything to share this with my family, but also now my family is sharing it to show other kids, other adults that if they can do it, other people can do it. I mean, I remember asking my son and daughter, like they were, they had school, they didn't want to maybe do the show, was kind of taking up their time. But once I told them, hey, what if this show helps you show other kids and motivates them? That was their that was a reason to say yes to do the show. And I was such a proud dad, and I share that because I think knowing it like that was amazing. It goes to show that they're listening to me, right? They're listening to everything I've went through and how good it is to give back, right? Not everyone is as fortunate, and things aren't easy. And if we can show that to people that we've been through it and we're still pushing, I think that's been the amazing thing for these kids, especially on my side.
No, that's great. I'll definitely keep an eye out for that on Discovery.
Thank you.
Jesse, last question for you today. What advice would you give to someone who hears a whisper of a dream that just seems too scary to chase?
Gosh, Michael, I'm gonna use that picture behind you to answer that. And that picture behind you is of the buffalo. And I know we talked about this. And the buffalo saying is, when there's a storm coming, the buffalo runs into the storm, not away from the storm, because it knows if it runs into the storm, it gets through it faster. And the same thing, if you hear that whisper of chasing your dream, you got to run to it, run towards it. Don't run away from it, because a lot of us sometimes run away for it. We kind of move around, you know. Run towards your dream. You hear that whisper, it's for a reason. It's your mind is telling you something. It's telling you what you want, and so don't ignore it. Right? Listen to yourself. If anything, if it's whispering, you should tell yourself,
Hmm.
scream it into my ear, because when it starts screaming it, you're like hearing it louder and louder and louder, and then you're like, I can't ignore this. I gotta, this is telling me something, and I gotta go do it. And so it's kind of like the saying, be the buffalo, right? Run towards that dream. Don't run away from it, because the sooner you run towards it, I feel the sooner you're gonna do it.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. Yeah, I tell you, I come up to my office and I look at that, and again, like we were talking earlier, you get caught up in life and you get busy, you forget things, and I'll be going through something, and I know it's sitting right there on my shoulder, and I'm like,
Yeah,
why is this so hard? Because I'm not trying to go through it. I'm trying to go around it or dance with it or try the easy route. And oftentimes we go through that storm, which takes no time at all. We get on the other side and go, that was faster than I thought it was going to be. It was actually
right.
not as hard as I was going to be, or it was really difficult and I learned a ton, and I came out with so much knowledge and strength on the other side. So yeah, thanks for bringing attention to that. Jesse
Yeah.
Trujillo, thank you so much for being here today. What's the best way to follow along with you, Jesse? I know, is it Instagram, or I can put your Instagram in the show notes?
Yeah, I'm on pretty much all social media. You go to investwithjesse.com. I've pretty much I'm on every single social media. I'm always giving tips about real estate or investing. So I'd love to hear it. So I try to give some motivational talks. Wish I was a lot more funnier and stuff, but I mean, just follow me, and hopefully I can help you even just do a little bit. I believe in building wealth through real estate, and I love sharing everything that I've gone through. And if I can give you one little tip that might make you some extra money for you and your family, then it's worth sharing.
What was that website again? Investing with Jesse?
Yeah,
Okay.
investwithjesse.com.
Investwithjesse.com. We'll put that in the show notes,
Awesome.
and we'll continue to follow you along on social media. Jesse, thanks so much for being here with me today.
No, thank you, Michael. Appreciate your time.